I'm Anna Garcia, right now on True Crime News. Before the magazine covers, before the interviews, John Ramsey came here to True Crime News.
This is a cloud that still hangs over our family.
My exclusive interview with John Ramsey that made global headlines.
We want to keep tense pressure on the police.
Nearly 30 years after the crime, the new evidence emerging that could finally solve the case. Plus, a neighborhood feud in the picturesque Montana wilderness turns deadly.
Well, I'm hoping you guys just heard that shot.
It sounds bizarre because it is bizarre.
The mystery of Mountain Man Mike seemed to be solved.
His last words to me were, tell the authorities about the crazy guy down the street.
Until a shocking twist. Did someone get away with murder? Your daily source for true crime starts right now. Before the global media coverage like People magazine cover stories or appearances on NBC's The Today Show, John Ramsey came here to True Crime News, the case of JonBenét Ramsey. In my exclusive interview, John told me about his continued fight to find his daughter's killer and about one of the investigators who questioned the handling of the case. That's at the center of a new docu-series that's also raising questions.
Prior to Christmas Day of 1996, we were just a regular family.
And of course, then that all changed.
Someone killed this 6-year-old child.
Documentary legend John Berlinger, the director who helped free 3 West Memphis, Kentucky teenagers from wrongful convictions in the iconic film Paradise Lost, is now turning his lens to the JonBenét Ramsey murder in Cold Case. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey?
Oh, hello. I'm JonBenét.
My films and TV work has been the catalyst for getting 6 people out of prison, 2 on death row. And while this is technically not a wrongful conviction, obviously, they were convicted in the court of public opinion.
The 3-part series that debuted this week is a searing indictment of how Boulder police handled the investigation and cast suspicion on the Ramsey family.
You have a small town, inexperienced police force overwhelmed by a crime that they had never seen before, had no experience in. They get an early idea and they can't move off their tunnel vision. And for some reason, there's something about human nature where people just can't admit that they made a mistake.
The new series echoes calls to reopen the case, exactly what we heard from John Ramsey when we talked to him a few weeks ago for an exclusive True Crime News interview.
My goal right now is really to get an answer as to who did this for the sake of my family, for my children, their children. This is a cloud that still hangs over our family, and it's not fair, it's not right, but it's there.
And for John, that means getting the crime scene evidence out of the Boulder Police's hands and into the most state-of-the-art labs for DNA testing. Shockingly, some evidence has never been tested with advanced DNA technologies.
So we've had unidentified male DNA from January 1997. And as one prosecutor told me, I've never ever seen a police department try to explain away unidentified male DNA in a sexual assault case.
The long list of the other untested pieces in the murder case could be potentially game-changing. There are at least 7 items which are considered critical evidence that have never been tested.
To our knowledge, that's correct. These items were sent originally in January 1997 to the lab for testing, were returned untested.
One of those items, the garrote used to strangle JonBenét. If this is one of the weapons that was used to kill JonBenét, how do you not test it for DNA? This is the part I don't get. It is covered with evidence.
I don't know why they didn't test it in the beginning, and to my knowledge, it still hasn't been tested. Part of John's skepticism comes from a relationship he struck up with now deceased cold case detective Lou Smith, who Boulder police initially brought in to pursue the Ramseys. Lou Smith, who was a legendary detective that was brought in on this case by the DA years later, told me on his deathbed, he said, if this case stays in the Boulder police hands, it'll never be solved.
I went to bed fairly late last night, and I tossed and turned. I really feel that the investigation is going down the wrong track.
Instead, Smith poked holes in Boulder's police work. In the Netflix documentary, you hear directly from him in a series of never-before-heard tapes he made during the investigation.
There's a little guest bedroom there that's right next to JonBenét room. This rope was found in the guest bedroom. It's not the Ramseys.
Oh, I think Lou Smith is right. I don't want to equivocate. I think it was an intruder, and there is evidence of an intruder. There's glass fragments. Lou Smith very brilliantly shows that there's blades of grass that were caught under a grate.
The hope now is that the new attention will convince the governor of Colorado to take over the investigation from Boulder PD and perhaps get justice for JonBenét.
The other thing with the loss of a child, you never get over it. You think about it almost every day. I see a little blonde-headed girl hanging under her dad's arm, and it tugs at my heart. But I know JonBenét's safe. She's in heaven.
This country owes John Ramsey a massive apology, and the way that apology could be manifest is force the Boulder Police Department to accept outside help. There seems to be not a will in Colorado to solve this crime, which can be solved.
Up next, trouble in paradise when neighbors in a peaceful mountain town go to war.
I just heard a bullet fly over my head. It's not getting any better up here.
And only one of them will survive. Now to a years-long land dispute that ended with one neighbor dead and another charged with his murder. It happened outside Helena, Montana. Now there's been a major development in this murder mystery in the mountains. This is the man Montana investigators accused of killing Mike Kreitz, Leon Ford. But Ford's trial ended in a mistrial, letting him off the hook for an accusation that sent shockwaves through a rugged mountain community in Montana.
Either coyotes or some animals had dug up the remains because possibly of the smell and pulled the bag partially out of the dirt.
When a bag of dismembered bones is found partially buried in the woods outside Helena, locals immediately suspect they may belong to Mike Kreitz, also known as Mountain Man Mike, a crusty outdoorsman who moved to Montana to live a solitary life on his own piece of 80-acre paradise.
This particular lifestyle suited Mike. He wanted to live off the grid.
After falling in love with Montana on hunting trips, Mike saved up and built his dream home. Sure, it had no running water or electricity, but that's the way he liked it, living with his beloved canines that were 87% wolf.
He was just so proud of this land, and he even liked living here in the winter, which I found crazy.
Well, it's right about 10 below, and it's most definitely kind of a continuing blizzard out there, but I'm going hunting.
Despite being a loner, Mike made good friends with his neighbors Gloria and Mark Flora.
It's not against the law to be odd or eccentric, and that's what he was. And he liked to live out by himself, and if you didn't want any trouble with Mike, all you had to do was leave him alone.
But trouble soon found Mike when John Meehan and his wife moved to the neighborhood. Turk Road is neither public nor private. Instead, landowners secure easements, a form of legal permission allowing them to use the road when it passes through another's property.
Meehan and his wife maintain that no one has a right to cross that. They own it, and they aren't opening it up to anyone.
That's where all the trouble starts. You see, Mike Kreitz lived near the end of Turk Road. To get to his house, he had to cut across John Meehan's property. And according to Sheriff and Coroner Leo Dutton, Meehan didn't want anyone on his land. The feud was on.
Michael Kreitz maintained when he bought his land that he did have an easement to cross all roads into his property. That was the genesis of the argument. Then neither one wanted to back down.
So how were Mike Kreitz and the Floras supposed to get to their properties?
That was the issue. They had no other way to get there.
It sounds bizarre because it is bizarre. It sounds crazy because it is crazy. It's certainly not enough of a reason to go to war with people over, and they did.
They harassed Mike, and they blocked the road so that other people couldn't get through.
As soon as Mike left, Mead would get on his snowmobile and race up to Mike's property, terrorize his dogs, do loops around his house with a snowmobile, and then race down before Mike could get back.
Well, old Johnny here's blocked the road.
Mike began recording video evidence of his tense showdowns with Meehan. He claimed this one nearly got him killed.
Well, I'm hoping you guys just heard that shot. I just heard a bullet fly over my head, so we'll see if that's enough to make you law enforcement types do something. Hope you will. It's not getting any better up here.
My brother expressed his fear for his life numerous times to law enforcement.
They called a lot. You crossed my land, you plowed me in, you tried to run me off the road. Those are the kind of things that were beginning to escalate.
If things were bad with the Meehans, they were about to get a lot worse when a new neighbor moved onto Turk Road. Enter Leon Ford. More trouble was on the way. When we come back, the turf war takes a shocking turn.
He was pointing a rifle at me. I'm by my truck right now, but I'm going to stand watch here, and if he points a gun at me, I'm going to shoot him.
And a trial stuns the community. That's next. We're back with the mystery of mountain man Mike Kreitz. Mike's feud with his neighbors in a rural area outside of Helena, Montana was escalating quickly. And when someone new moved into the property next to his, things went from bad to much worse.
Well, I'm hoping you guys just heard that shot. I just heard a bullet fly over my head.
Tempers had long been flaring between Mike Kreitz and John Meehan over Meehan's refusal to allow neighbors to cross his property to get to their homes. It got so menacing, Mike started recording their run-ins.
He said, "Get the my land," and he pointed a gun at me twice. I'm trying to dig out of the snow here and break. Yeah, I did think he was going to shoot me. I ran. Look, a rifle of some kind. He was pointing a rifle at me. I'm by my truck right now, but I'm going to stand watch here, and if he points a gun at me, I'm going to shoot him.
Meehan was charged with a misdemeanor and ordered to remain 1,500 feet away from Mike. But John Meehan was about to become the least of Mike's problems. Enter Leon Ford, ex-Navy man. He owned undeveloped land just north of Mike's house, and he wanted to use Mike's property as a shortcut. Not surprisingly, Mike refused. Now a second feud erupted and turned heated quickly.
Ford was working on this gate that Mike had closed. Ford was trying to, I don't remember, cut it open or pry it open or do something, and Mike went down and Ford just pulled a gun on him. Mike ducked behind a bush, and Ford yelled at him, "Yeah, you better run."
Mike shared his fears with close friend Chris Forsyth.
He flat just looked at me and he said, "Chris, they're gonna kill me." And I just kind of blew it off. You know, I was like, "Yo, come on, they're not gonna kill you off our road." And that was the last time I seen Mike.
June 26, Mike calls Mark and Gloria and tells them Ford asked for a meeting to discuss their ongoing battle.
He called me about 10 minutes to 9. In the morning and asked me to come over and help him because he was afraid Leon Ford was going to kill him. And I didn't go. We told Mike to, videotape it, don't expose yourself, record the conversation. And he said he would. And that was the last time I talked to Mike.
Mike even confided his fears to his mother, who says he had a dark premonition of his fate.
His last words to me were, "Mom, if they find me dead up here, please tell the authorities about the crazy guy down the street. Goodbye, Mom, I love you."
Though Mike was never seen again, it was a real mountain mystery until one day, 4 months later, when a Forest Service employee found that bag of dismembered bones.
Even though we had to wait for DNA, we knew it was him. And I will never forget when my mother asked me, she said, "Connie, do you know if they can tell whether Mike was shot in the head?" And I didn't want to tell her, but I figured she would hear it somewhere, and so I had to look at my mother and say, Mom, there was not a head.
9 years after this grisly discovery, police charged Leon Ford with deliberate homicide. At trial 3 years later, prosecutors claimed the evidence pointed to none other than Leon Ford as the killer. Prosecutors told jurors Ford took zip ties from a warehouse that matched ties found on Kreitz's remains. And a camera captured Ford's truck heading up the road to Kreitz's property around the time Mike placed his last call. But Ford's 3-week trial ended in a shocking mistrial, and months later, another surprising twist from the Lewis and Clark County attorney. He wouldn't seek a retrial. Leon Ford walked away a free man, leaving Mike Kreitz's family with the prospect they may never get justice or find the person who killed their beloved mountain man Mike. So will this family ever find justice? Mike's sister, Connie, sure hopes so. I recently had the chance to talk with her. Joining us now is Connie Kreitz, Mike's sister. Connie, thanks for joining us, and I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
You went to Leon Ford's trial every day. What was that experience like for you?
It kind of drove everything home, because I had kind of desensitized myself to a lot of the details surrounding my brother's death, and unfortunately there was a lot of really graphic evidence, and it was really difficult being in the same room with the person accused of killing him for that many days in a row.
What do you believe happened to your brother?
It appears that somebody punched him in the face, put 2 bullets in his skull, and proceeded to dismember him. That's what I know. And it certainly wasn't a stranger. And it certainly wasn't that the ground opened up and some gremlins came out and did it.
So then when the district attorney makes the decision to dismiss the case, how did you and your family react to that?
I'm not happy with the decision not to retry, but I understand it to a certain extent. I really hope that they can just find something that just ties it up together a little bit more. And I don't want to armchair quarterback the thing, but I really feel like the facts could have been presented maybe a little differently.
So then what happens to the status of your brother's murder case?
Sheriff Dutton says that they're still pursuing it. I don't feel like it's being actively pursued. It's not, I hate to use cold case, but I guess at this point it's a cold case.
What would your message be to anyone out there who knew your brother and the parties involved and may have been around at the time?
Rack your brain, because we know what happened, and there's got to be some little piece of information out there that will just tie it together in that nice little bow that I'm looking for. And don't listen to, oh, my brother was being a jerk, and he wasn't. That was his legal access.
Connie, what would justice look like in this case?
Well, in my mind, it would be that, we find some more evidence.
Thank you, Connie, for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. On the next True Crime News, a wife found with a gunshot wound to the head. 1 man, 2 wives, both found dead 19 years apart. What really happened?
I cannot recall solely from the trauma.
He blames it on memory loss, but was well enough to go on a spending spree.
2 days before the death, Robert Kolaski started writing checks.
On the next True Crime News. For the latest breaking crime news, go to truecrimenews.com. Watch more exclusive content on our YouTube channel, listen to our podcast, and follow us at My True Crime News. That's it for today's True Crime News. I'm Anna Garcia. See you next time, everyone. Crime doesn't stop, neither do we.